I was really just focused on him, and all of a sudden he stopped breathing. I remember looking at his saturations, and it went like 55, 33, 11, and 0. And then so like everyone's rushing to the bedside and pumping his chest and giving him oxygen. And right at that moment, I remember saying, like whispering, like, God, please don't take him right now.
Welcome to You Belong, the podcast where stories come to life, hosted by Pastor Nate. In each episode, we dive into deep, powerful testimonies and moving stories that reveal the incredible ways God is at work in our lives. Remember, everyone has a story, and every story matters to God. So whether you're searching for hope, inspiration, or simply a reminder that you're not alone, let us journey together and discover the stories that unite us all. This is You Belong.
All right, so excited to have my friends Dan and Kourtney Rice with me on the You Belong podcast. And so what I want to do, we're just going to have a conversation. We want to hear your story because we know that your story matters to God and should matter to us too. So let's get right to it. I want to hear where you guys are from and what do you guys do?
I'm from near Sussex, New Brunswick, Annagans. I grew up on a farm with my 3 brothers, my parents, and I was homeschooled and until grade 10. And then I went to the Sussex Christian School. And then I went off to Halifax to university and stayed there, met Dan.
So your mom was just done teaching at grade 10. She's like,
She's
I've done this too much.
I'm done with you, so move on.
Okay, cool.
Here in Miramichi, I'm a program manager for a youth and care organization, and I run our one adult program.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Very cool. What about you?
Well, I grew up in Peterborough, Ontario, Central Ontario. A mom and dad, 2 brothers and a sister, so full house. And, I'm a child of the 80s, so pretty much grew up on my own, riding my bike around the streets. Went to York University initially, which is in Toronto, so spent some time there. And then just kind of toured around by the seat of my pants, which eventually led me to Atlantic Canada. Found myself in Halifax, met Kourtney there. We were married. We moved to Miramichi initially so I could run the Sport Check in 2011. And now I've left Sport Check and I work for the federal government.
Oh, federal government. What do you do there?
I work at the payroll center.
At the payroll.
So, yeah.
Just everyone in Miramichi.
Yeah.
Federal
It's
government sounds
It sounds
a little more mysterious.
Sounds a little more mysterious, a little more
Wish it was like
intense.
CIA or something.
So you both come from the same kind of family dynamics then. So like 3 boys, 1 girl. So you're saying you got 2 brothers,
yeah,
sister?
it's the same.
You
actually.
just realized that now, didn't you? You never noticed that.
I did.
You did.
Just
Very
realized it
good.
now.
Very good.
Just realized it.
Very good. So how long have you guys been married for again?
14 years.
14.
Yeah, together 16.
16. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
What's been your biggest highlight?
Well, we do have 4 children.
Oh
2 boys,
man,
2
4
girls.
kids?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so that's been an adventure.
What's their favorite things they do?
Avery's really into dance and piano. The boys and Poppy all do judo.
Yes.
Sawyer's into basketball.
Does Ellie do basketball too or no?
Here and there.
Here and there? Okay.
Yeah. The girls are into horseback riding.
Okay.
And actually, they all do piano. So,
They all do piano?
yeah. And they, a lot of times, just like running around like wild children outside and
Yeah.
building forts.
Okay. I've seen they do a lot of skits and stuff like that. Is that the thing they do?
They
I've seen
do,
stuff on
actually,
Facebook.
yeah.
I loved watching that. I
They
watched it a
like-
couple times over.
Yeah. Creating their own plays or movies. And Avery gets into the costume making and makeup and script writing. And they're all pretty good.
She's writing the scripts and stuff
Oh
too?
yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
We're
Okay.
completely uninvolved. Like
Oh,
we're not allowed to
interesting.
see
Okay.
any of the process, and then they
They
come
just show
to
you.
us with the final product. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your job? Like, what does that all look like?
So we have 2 adults at my location, and they're essentially adults that have very complex needs, resulting in 24-hour care.
Okay.
So multiple diagnosis and things like that. So they need a lot of help with just basic life skills and impulse control things and whatnot. And it's very interesting. Every day is quite different, and I love it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And I was gonna ask about your job, but your job sounds super.
It's a lot of calculations.
A lot of
staring at a computer
calculations.
and-
But you were doing Sport Check for a long time then,
Yep.
before that, eh?
Yeah, and I still work there part-time in the service shop, which is just kind of like
You do it for the
something I like to
discount
do.
still. They probably give you a discount if you do
That,
that.
We
yeah,
do have
yeah,
4
yeah,
kids.
that helps so
Pretty
much. 4
important.
kids,
Do 4 kids,
sports and
yeah.
activities for sure. But I do like it just to get back into the store, and I work on like the bikes and the skates and stuff. So it's just something I like to do. I do that on the side anyway at home, like just working on my bikes and tech stuff like that.
Okay. You do bike stuff, like building bikes or looking after bikes, kind of thing.
Either or,
Both,
yeah.
Very good. Oh, that's
We often have people in the community messaging, "Can I drop this bike off or
Okay.
so and so's bike off?"
Yeah, I take care of a lot of friends' bikes, and it's
Yeah.
just tinkering and fun. And
That's cool stuff. Do you do a lot of biking then? You must do a lot of biking summertime, or like what does that
yeah,
look
probably
like?
not as much as I'd like to, just time wise. But I do make time for biking for sure. A little bit of mountain biking. I tend more to road bike in the summertime. One of my favorite things to watch and kind of study is like cycling.
Do you want them to topple over and see a big dog pile? Is
No,
that-
I absolutely hate it.
Okay.
You know, if
You
you
don't
don't see
see
anyone
that.
get hurt. No, you want everyone to be at their best. So
That's cool. But you guys, so biking is a thing you do, but you guys do something together. You guys like running. I see some posts on Facebook. It
Yeah.
makes me die inside every time I see.
That's-
Yeah, I just ran another 200K.
No,
Yeah.
that's-
Well, that's actually how we got to know each other.
Okay,
So
so-
we met at the Gap. We were just both working there, like as an extra job.
Oh, fun.
And I happened to be training for a marathon. Dan,
I pretended I was
Pretended
training
that
for
he
a
was training
marathon
for a
when I met
marathon?
her.
Is that true?
The truth is, she said, "I'm training for the Blue Nose," and I said, "Oh, me too." And as the words came out of my mouth, it
Why
was
did I say that?
yeah. Well, I ran.
you did
But
triathlons and stuff.
I'd been doing more triathlons,
Okay.
and I would come from the world of like trail running, so
Adventure racing.
yeah, and adventure racing, which is like multi-sport stuff, so like paddling, biking, and running. And I'd never run a marathon. I ran a little bit, but as soon as she said that, and I wanted to know her more, I thought, well, yeah, I'm training too. So technically, it was true because we both ran the Blue Nose that year.
It's great to like start relationships with lies. I just find that helps the best. But they had to like live up to those, and so it just it just helps you work out. So like
Yeah.
So you did. So how long was that marathon?
It was the full, like, so 42.2
42 kilometers. And how'd you do? How'd you make out?
Great. We ran together most of it.
Most of the
You guys
race.
hold hands the whole time.
No.
No.
When
Who's more intense when you're racing? Like,
I
is
think
there-
adventure racing, it's him. I'm probably more hard on myself I don't even know, in the trail running thing.
Yeah, you
I'd say
are.
we're probably pretty equal when it comes to the solo running.
Yeah. I don't want to get into a huge explanation of adventure racing but essentially one person is the navigator and they're responsible for getting you from point to point and finding these checkpoints. So there's orienteering involved. There is some speed and timeliness that you need to kind of monitor. And oftentimes people aren't as focused on that. The rest of the team might just follow your lead, and you have to be good at communication. And I think that's something I've grown to be better at. Because oftentimes growing up, I spent a lot of time just on my own. So you don't have anyone who's like relying on you for anything.
Yeah.
I just kind of would ride my bike on my own if I was in the woods. If I was, I grew up on a river and I used to like hop in my dad's 12-foot aluminum boat and drive off on my own and go explore the woods and do all this stuff.
I'm happy for him to take the lead. Like, I appreciate him doing the majority of orienteering and the navigation. It's hard. It's really hard to do. And I just mean maybe there's certain things that you care about within that more.
We're getting pretty deep in this
Yeah, it's
conversation.
very,
very
I'm peeling. I think it's like I die
But we
inside
stick through. and
every
we
time I
stick
see
it
it.
out.
So
No, like look, everyone has the ability to run, and a lot of people say that same thing to us, Nate. Like, oh, I could never run with you. But first of all, if anybody ever saw me run or went with me, you could probably quickly walk with me. Like, I'm not going very fast. And sure, I go long distance, but I've been doing it for so long that it's just, you build up over time. But by no means do we want our activity to make anyone
No.
feel any certain way. We hopefully would inspire people to, just push a little harder at something that they love.
you've inspired me to put down the bag of Doritos I was eating when I was watching the
You
Facebook.
can eat Doritos while you're
we
trail
trail
running.
run so you can eat Doritos.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's
Listen,
so good.
When you're running these extended ultra marathons, and just for anyone who doesn't know, an ultra marathon is anything over 42.2 kilometers. So a marathon, that's the distance. Anything beyond that is considered an ultra marathon. So, we would average between 50 and 100 kilometers in a race. But when you show up, this is one of the greatest things about the trail running community that a lot of people don't know. And some of our friends that we've introduced absolutely love this. So first of all, you're wearing a backpack and it's full of just wonderful things. I'm even more guilty than most people because I use it as an excuse. So I've got butter tarts. I've got, like just delicious candies and chips. So you show up at these aid stations, which would be throughout the trail to make sure you're safe, but also you can resupply. Oftentimes you show up at these aid stations and there's music playing. People are like, shaking tambourines, cheering you on. And then you've got this table you've got this table of like, there's like bananas and pickles and
Why pickles? Is that there's stuff in
Feels
pickles?
really good on your stomach. I don't know, salt, something about it is.
Yeah,
some
people will
magical.
drink pickle juice,
Okay.
eat dill pickles.
Right, so
but then
good.
you have chips and cookies and all
Grilled
sorts of things.
cheese.
So grilled cheese.
It just needed an
I
array
bet the
of
grilled cheese
things.
would be
Doritos,
amazing
yeah.
after
Yeah.
running a bunch.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
give me grilled
yeah.
cheese.
And we haven't done really a lot of adventure racing for a while. We've been more kind of focused on the ultra marathons, and it's really fun because we sometimes show up to a race and just one of us does it and bring the kids along, and they are a part of that atmosphere. And then other times we both do the same race and end up running together most of the day or into the evening, and it is a really fun atmosphere, and it's nice for us to do something individually but together at the same time.
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool to have that you guys can do individually, but also share that with your husband. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
What's been like your biggest? So you guys doing that? That's been a big part of your relationship. What's been one of the biggest struggles that you guys have had as a family dynamic? Like there's been stuff that's happened in the past, or like what, this was a big part of God moving in our lives, working through that.
Well, our kids are close together in age, so I think just navigating through having like a 6'4", and newborn was challenging at times, just because you.
Oh, it was like two years between. I guess it is. Yeah.
And then on top of that, Sawyer, our second child, was born with a congenital heart defect, so that required open heart surgeries and a lot of time spent.
How old had he been the first one you had?
The first time he had at 5 months. He had an open heart. He had 2 procedures done in that, and then the second one was at 4.
Okay.
There was other procedures in between those and whatnot. So I think trying to, it was hard probably times having a sense of self within the chaos, and also just finding time for each other was really tricky.
At what point was it during pregnancy you realized that he was going to have a heart defect?
No.
Or it was after the fact?
It should have been diagnosed in utero, but it wasn't. So when we were being discharged from the hospital, my family doctor came by and just to check him, and he's like, I think I hear a murmur, but no big deal. Like 40% of people.
I know he's just born. He's got a murmur.
But he was like, it's probably nothing because so many people are born with murmurs. And it's nothing to worry about. So then he sent us to the pediatrician just out of precaution a week later. And then so he said, I hear it. I'm going to send you to Moncton for a more in-depth ultrasound. So he was 2 weeks old.
Okay.
And that's when I definitely knew something was wrong because it's about 45 minutes into the ultrasound that the tech hadn't really said anything. And then he said, actually, we have a cardiologist here from the IWK today. I'm going to call him in.
Oh, and as a parent,
And
what's going on in your mind at that? Because you're just like, it's just a murmur. Like, it's a big deal.
He was out in the waiting room with Avery, who was only 2 at the time.
Right.
So I was just thinking, okay, well, this is obviously something. So he came in, Dr. Wong, and looked for a minute. And then his words were, is your husband here? And I was like, yeah, he's out there with our toddler. He's like, okay, let's go find a place to talk. And so the first thing he said to us was, so Sawyer has a large hole in his heart along with other complications. I don't think you need to come by ambulance to the IWK right now, but come first thing in the morning.
But how soon
And
can you be
so,
in Halifax?
Like, you need to come tomorrow. Yeah. So how soon can you get
Like
there?
I've got like I got hairs
So,
like on my arm. Like as a dad, like I can't imagine.
Yeah. So
Because
that's
like you're
when
just thinking,
it-
it's just like you got this newborn baby, you're so excited.
he looked great,
Oh, by
like
the
he was-
way, he's got a hole in his heart.
Yeah. So, which actually turns out that the hole was a good thing
Okay.
because the way that his heart was, so his right ventricle and left ventricle grew in reverse of each other, but his right ventricle was also too small. So because he had formed this hole, it actually allowed for the blood flow to go through. Otherwise, he would have been airlifted immediately and had surgery like at a few days old. So the hole is actually, while it was an issue, it was actually a good thing because he had 100% oxygen when he was born.
Okay.
So it was less urgent than it could have been.
All right.
So that was good. So yeah,
So,
and it was just
Yeah.
it was a long,
yeah.
stressful journey, and
And IWKs, they're great there.
they were
And looked after
amazing.
you
Yeah.
guys, yeah.
He was supposed to have a surgery at just a few weeks old, and then they realized he was actually doing really well, so they were able to delay that and do 2 procedures in one at 5 months, and then a few catheterizations here and there. And then the goal was to get him to as close to age 4 as possible, so that he could have this like Gore-Tex tube put in that was an adult size. Yeah, basically. Yeah, we use Gore-Tex when we run sometimes. So it was cool. And then so that was able to happen. So he was 4, and then the size that they put him, he's able to grow into as he reaches adulthood. So
Okay.
yeah, it was a lot. And then
Yeah. I
So-
just pictured thinking of a little 5-month-old baby, right? Like, oh man.
yeah, and there were a lot of scary moments in the hospital. There was some pretty fragile weeks after surgery where he had kidney strain and his lungs were collapsing and stopped breathing, and there's some intense moments that really tested our faith, I guess, and tested just our family unit and whatnot.
Yeah, there's probably lots that goes on in your mind at that time, right? It's during those moments where being tested where your faith is being stretched to no end, right? And I always have a hard time thinking, like, how do people get through moments like that without having a faith, right? It's like, God, I'm putting my trust in this situation, you know what I mean? Like, that's...
Yeah, I found it extremely hard. Just like I grew up in a in a family that, you know, I guess we went to church. I went to church, I should say.
On your bike into the back of the
Pretty much.
Just rowing.
I would walk to church and stuff. I grew up in like an Anglican congregation, but it was a different type of like I just went to church and you know that type of
Like habitual stuff.
Yeah, you know, you just read the same prayers all the time, and you just always thought, okay, you know, like I've been baptized when I was a baby. So I guess I should say my faith was still growing because it wasn't until like I met Kourtney and her family where, you know, I really started to dive in who God was and who He was in my life, and that the fact that he start thinking about Him regularly, other than between 8:30 and 9:30 on Sunday when you're there, and then thinking about the rest of the time. Right. So I remember finding it really hard. But the good thing about being new in faith and exploring for me, which helped me a lot, was being able to look for those things. Like I can remember, like Kourtney said, when we first went to Halifax, and they have a cardiac team that we got to know really well and are incredibly thankful for. There's this one doctor, and he's like, I'm trying to explain to you, and he Dr. Chen, he was a super smart guy and very blunt and straightforward, but he was like, let me just try and draw it for you. And I remember him drawing this picture, and as he's drawing it and explaining to us that, the hole in the heart actually helped this bigger ventricle pump for this one that probably wouldn't have survived on its own, blah, blah, blah. And I remember, I might have even said it to you, I don't know if I did or not, but just saying like this is God's hand on, on my son's heart, saying, okay, I got you. And it was pretty cool. So that really helped me, being new and exploring the faith. But, you asked what helped us and Kourtney's family. Like I couldn't have done it without them. I think,
well, we had so many, my family was big, and we have friends in Halifax that essentially housed us when one of us were staying in the hospital, and they like, bring your mom, like she can stay with the kids too. And knowing that so many churches that didn't even know us were praying meant a lot. And one specific moment, it was a few days after surgery, and things were looking okay, and then all of a sudden things went downhill real fast. And up until that point, I hadn't really been looking at my phone much. I was really just focused on him, and all of a sudden he stopped breathing. I remember looking at his saturations, and it went like 55, 33, 11, and 0. And then so like everyone's rushing to the bedside and pumping his chest and giving him oxygen. And right at that moment, I remember saying, like whispering, like, God, please don't take him right now. And then I got a text, and I looked at it, which normally I wouldn't have in that situation. It was from my high school principal, and all it said was, God is near. And in that, like, as soon as I read that, I felt this
overwhelming.
Well,
Like,
it's like hard to describe, but I felt like this physical warmth, like just come over me, and I was like, yeah, he is. Like, I knew right then, like, Sawyer was gonna be fine. And I even said to Dan, because he was standing there with Avery, and we're both so scared, and I was like, he's gonna be okay. Like, I know it. And it was such a monumental moment because it, like, I had probably 30 unread messages, and
That's the one.
and that's the one in that terrifying moment, and it just came through at that exact time, and
I love that.
to me, it's not a coincidence that it happened. So that was big for me, and I think about that when I'm feeling maybe less close to God here and there. So
Yeah, just a reminder God's near.
Yeah, for sure.
He's there during the great times. He's there during the little scary times too, right?
Yeah.
Like that's super powerful and stuff.
yeah, so yeah, but yeah, having people was so meaningful. Like when Sawyer was 4, he had surgery again, and then there was some real tough days for him. The recovery was really hard, and Pastor Jeff and Lindsay, they just drove to Halifax, and
So cool.
Sawyer was not in any sort of visiting mood. I don't think he said anything, and they just sat with us for the day. Like they weren't there for anything besides just being with us, and that was so meaningful for us to see that kind of thing. And people that we didn't even really know, like just going out of their way and bringing us a meal. Friends from here whose parents lived in Cole Harbour, bringing us a warm meal, and just getting messages from people we didn't know saying, we are praying for Sawyer in our church or in our family. And yeah, it really opened up our eyes to just how big God's family is. And we felt so supported and loved. So
Yeah, there was a moment we were in the NICU, like just in terms of, so this is just a recovery, and I was, this was before the surgery. Now, anyway, like I had spent some time down in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, and I had made some friends, and again, I wasn't going to church or anything, and hadn't really thought about like God in my life, but this was a moment for me realizing that He was always kind of with me, and I remember. Sorry, I get pretty emotional pretty quick.
You're good. This is a safe place.
Yeah.
I know. Anyway, I remember getting the phone rings, and I was just kind of sitting there, and oh no, this was after the surgery because I was sitting with Sawyer, and he woke up early. But anyway, that's besides the point. But the phone rings, and they're like, yeah, okay, Daniel, you have a phone call. And I was like, what the heck? Like, who's calling me at the nurse's station in
the ICU?
In the ICU? And they're like, I'm really sorry. We explained you couldn't give it to you, but she wouldn't, like, whatever. And anyway, there was
just nagging. She will not stop.
It was anyway. I made these wonderful friends that when I lived in Yarmouth, and really, kind of the only takeaway from there was these wonderful people I met. But my friend Alana and her mother Becky, who essentially took care of me in a really tough, kind of difficult time for me, and it was Becky, and she had just called, and it just, sorry.
The kids make fun of him because he only cries. He cries when it's about like them,
family,
or dogs in movies.
Or dogs.
Anyway,
Yeah,
just knowing,
like dog
old
movies.
yeller.
Like,
Old yellers.
well,
dogs,
Daddy's gonna cry.
dads, moms, anything. People stub their toe. No. Anyway,
They
but
all watch him in movies, but in those sentimental parts, like, look at Daddy's gonna cry.
Look at me.
He's got it.
It's like, what? Yeah.
Understanding that God was always with me, even when I didn't like reach out to Him or know He was there, was pretty cool. So Becky calling me was just a really pivotal moment in a similar vein to what Kourtney had. It's something I think about pretty often. So thankful for them, and
That's cool.
it's pretty cool.
Love the people that God brings in your lives, right? Even the people from your way past, principal, and like your friend that was also made a big deal. And that's just a reminder, because we don't necessarily get to hear God's audible voice anymore. It's not like the Old Testament back in those old days, but He does send people in our lives where He can, like, no, this is me, man, to remind you that I'm with you. And so that's great to have those moments and stuff. So big part of your life, even still, like, this is a big part of it. It's still there and stuff.
Still, sometimes I realize anyway that there's still some fear in the background. Like, he's had his surgeries, he's great, but at the end of the day, he still has a heart condition for life.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while, you realize, like, you might have been more nervous leading up to an appointment than you should be, or it definitely lingers, and it's a part of your daily life, even if you don't necessarily think about it every day.
What's one thing you would love to let people know, like, about this whole experience, like from God's perspective? What's that one thing? If there's someone out there who's like struggling with something, or like, man, this is what we learned through this.
For me, looking at that experience and just life in general, it's like it doesn't come quick. It's not always easy, but God's always there. I think in a world of immediacy, we need the answer, and it doesn't come that way. Like, even after Sawyer's first surgery, we weren't out of the woods, and he didn't have his next surgery till he was 4. So we lived with him for that time. But in the same vein,
waiting.
Yeah, so the wait is hard, and we, for those of us that maybe are a little further along in our walk, we understand that. But especially for people that are new, which I was at the time, because I did want answers right away, and I wanted it to be okay right away. And
well, we had
God
a
works in
window,
his God works in His own time.
Yeah, because they kept saying like he could technically have it at age 2, but it will be more complicated, more dangerous. So we'd like to push him to age 4, but every few months we were having these appointments, and so it was from age 2 to 4 that we were just kind of lingering, almost in this like limbo of just waiting to see what's going to happen, and hoping that time would keep going so that he could get to 4 years old, not earlier.
Just God works in His time, and don't put our our earthly values on things. Just be patient, be strong, be confident, and look to others too. Look to, in those times that you're weak and you need answers, or you're looking for something. Just look to others.
Yeah, I think for me, I found I'm someone that takes on a lot and always feels like, okay, I can handle it, or I can do that. But I think accepting the help that was offered was big. Whether it was someone that would say, hey, I want to bring you a meal. Like, I love to cook and bake and that kind of thing. So my first reaction would be like, no, don't worry about that. Like, but then realizing people want to help. And so accepting it doesn't just help me, it helps everyone in our family. And even stuff like my friend Wendy, she went to my house when we were in the hospital and like cleaned my entire house. And, if I had known that ahead of time, I'd be like, don't you dare go to my house and clean my house. Like, you have better things to do. But just coming home to that, and, it was just, I felt so loved. And so I think I felt so loved during the entire journey. And I wouldn't have had that, I don't think, if I didn't accept it. So, and like Dan said, like, just understanding that the timing's not ours. And that was really relevant with everything with Sawyer, that I didn't know how everything was going to happen, but I had a lot of peace in knowing that his life and our lives are part of this bigger picture, even if I don't have all the chapters laid out in front of me. Yeah. And so I just, we lived it. We lived, and we're still living it. But it was challenging, but also it brought a lot of people close to us. It brought a lot of moments where we felt really close to God that I don't think we would have otherwise felt. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
And like, that would have been a big dynamic part of your family, is that whole thing with Sawyer and stuff like that. And you guys do have a different dynamic too, because like you guys are your homeschool parents, right, too, as well. And so that's a whole other realm of dynamics of what that looks like. What does that look like for you guys as a family? Because I growing up in the 90s, I don't know how often it was. Like, you were homeschooled. Like, I can't think of one person growing up who was homeschooled. It wasn't until I came in college, when at Bible school, and a friend of mine who I always met, and he said, I was actually homeschooled, but I'm like, oh, but you don't seem like you're homeschooled.
Yeah,
you know what
weird
I mean?
And
you're not like it caught me up, because I'd only ever heard of those are homeschoolers. I was homeschooled, and so I was like, right. What's the difference? And so like for him, it seemed like he was, because in you had all these presumptions of what it meant to be homeschooled, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I definitely was in that time where people kind of looked at you strange, like, what? You don't go to school? Like, that's super
Weird.
weird.
Yeah.
You must be really awkward. And,
And then were they
anyway.
wrong? No,
Well, I
no.
probably still am awkward, but there's never ever been one person come out of public school that's awkward, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so we started homeschooling about 6 years ago. We did, and it was a really amazing.
So Avery, she wasn't home.
So
She wasn't homeschooled
Avery
right off the
went
bat.
for 3 years,
Okay.
and Sawyer went for 1 year, and then we started homeschooling full time after that. So we did 4 years full time, and then as of last year, they started also going to like a little private homeschool
cool.
setup, which is really great. So when they're gone doing that, that's when I go to work, and then I'm done when they're back. So it definitely has added challenges. It's not all easy peasy, but we love that it has just given us a lot more time as a family. It's given our kids the chance to be together more as siblings, which sometimes is challenging because they're siblings, but lots more time for us to just kind of explore and be outside and things like that.
And there's a bigger community now. I find it. Maybe it's
yeah,
more aware,
so-
but like there's definitely like because sometimes the homeschool club.
Yeah.
What is I don't know.
Yeah,
not
there's a
club,
homeschool group.
They come here even at the church. Sometimes
Yeah.
to the gym.
So it's
there's a
much
bunch of
more
kids.
like socially normal to homeschool now. So
yeah.
we don't really come across people thinking that we're strange for doing it. There's a
true,
pretty
that's
big
good.
homeschool movement. There's lots of local families in Miramichi that homeschool, and they all do it different means. Some are fully online, some are both working parents, some, there's a full-time stay-at-home parent. So it looks different for every family, but it's great, and we love it.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of benefits presented because of it for our kids, for sure.
So who does most of the teaching aspect? I feel like Avery's now the teacher now. I feel like she's moved into that role now.
Yeah, we just handed everything over
There
to
you
her.
go.
And said, yeah, she's actually 99% self-taught.
Yeah.
So she can just basically take her curriculum and just do it.
Get her done.
It really honestly depends because Dan does work from home, so it depends on the day. Initially, when I wasn't in my role, when I was home full-time, I did the majority of it. But then as of last year, I would say it's 50-50 when we're doing it. Dan steps in a lot, and depends on the subject too.
Yeah.
But the
Adventure running, you guys got that nailed down.
and homeschool curricula out there is
Top-notch stuff now.
Well, there's
right?
like thousands of choices to choose from. It's
Okay.
almost overwhelming.
Okay.
So a lot of the stuff you can get is almost like open and go. So essentially everything you need is right there. There's very clear directions, so you don't have to lesson plan the day before or anything like that.
So what does that look like getting into like universities? So just for if there's parents who are wondering about homeschool, what is that? Because I know there's probably some. Is it harder? Is it easier? Is it on par with
used
like?
to be harder
Yeah,
for sure.
now they're more open to that
Now there's actually a lot of universities that say they prefer private or homeschool kids because they are coming out of it knowing that.
What's expected kind of idea.
Yeah, and they just have the ability to self-teach.
Okay.
And their reading comprehension is usually higher and that kind of thing. There's really no issues anymore with universities accepting.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. And I would suggest if you are homeschooling through high school to just keep good records because they'll ask for some sort of transcript. So that would be the biggest thing to make sure that you
So
have.
where would you keep those transcripts? Like
You
not in like a loose leaf in your.
I mean, I'm sure
your
there's some people
cabinet,
that are
you have, like,
anti-screen. There's actually a lot of resources online now, as I
just
said.
keep
The
records.
Canadian Homeschooler specifically, she talks about that, about different avenues of keeping report cards or however you want to do it. But yeah,
Oh yeah, how do you do like what does the report cards look like?
some of
for
the
you?
curriculum comes with their.
And you're just
your
like
own
marking them down.
Yeah, they come with like tests and things like that, and
Okay.
just have good records,
Okay, records,
yeah,
okay.
especially in the older grades.
Do you find is there any like awkwardness being like your kids' teachers at all? Like if you're like maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually easier. Like you know what, your reading comprehension's not where it needs to be. You only read 5 books last week. Let's move that up to 10.
One of our children, I would say, because we're his parents, I'm not going to name any names. One of the boys,
That
Which
narrows
one?
it down.
Does he have a hole in his heart? Or does he have one that?
maybe has a little harder time sometimes getting going, like
Yeah.
getting started, finding the motivation because Legos are more exciting and that kind of thing. So that would be probably the biggest thing is like, but you're my mom saying this, you're not my teacher kind of thing. But then once he gets going, it's fine. So no, there's definitely not awkwardness. I actually find I love seeing them progress.
Yeah,
Like
that's a big
Poppy,
part.
she was just in kindergarten last year and she's doing grade 2 science
Yeah.
and
Oh my gosh.
reading at a high level. And I also love seeing them get their work done in a short time and then have so much free time.
Yeah, because
play.
it's like you can like it's not even cramming anymore. It's like literally if you just are
just
focused,
get-
you get her done by the
yeah.
afternoon, you're good to go.
Yeah,
right?
so
I think
that's
people
really nice.
forget that because like we have kids that are in school till like 3 o'clock now. So what are you doing till 3 and stuff like that?
Yeah.
So it's like no, if you are strategic in that, then you can get her done. So that's a big positive
Yeah,
for kids
just
and stuff
lots
like
more
that.
free time,
Yeah.
creativity and
Yeah.
play and sometimes fighting.
Yeah, that's always all part
Yeah.
of life. So you guys are doing a great job, and so like
Thank you.
And it was one of the reasons why we want to have you guys on this podcast and just to hear your story for if anyone's having ideas about homeschooling or if they're going through some pretty big trials. Like you guys, God's brought you through some big things in the past, right? And so that's cool. It's cool to hear those moments and to see your kids growing and excelling and stuff. So it's exciting for me to see. I'm not directly involved obviously with any of that stuff, but
you are.
from the
You
outside looking
Yeah.
in, I'm like, this is great to see because I love knowing that because parents are taking it seriously, right? And kids they want to learn more. They know like the world's changing and school's changing, so to have two godly parents that are doing their best and raising their kids in ways, it's encouraging for me to see as a parent raising my own 2 children and stuff now. So it's cool to see.
Well, the church has been a big help, honestly. Like just overall, we have so much appreciation for bringing them here and like kids coming here. I see people that actually genuinely care about them, and I know they're praying for them and even holding them accountable in some ways. And it really means a lot to have them be able to come somewhere that is reinforcing the messages that we're teaching them at home, and just have them as part of a community here is big.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like you definitely are a part of our kids' lives.
Yeah, for sure.
The reason we pulled over and said hello to you on the road the other day is because the kids are like, "There's Pastor Nate, there's Pastor Nate," and she spoke of how Pastor Jeff and Lindsay have been with us for that whole journey with Sawyer. And Pastor Kevin was with us, and this whole church, like it's part of our everyday lives, which is what if there's a message, something you can take away from church every day other than God's word, it's like this community that we want to build and we are building is just like if you just let it be part of your everyday life. Like our best friends are from here. A great little story just in terms of like a godly family. Before we wrap up, Courtney was talking the other day. She's like, I sent a message. And I can't remember what it was, but she sent a text group message, and we have a family group, like Courtney's family. And she said something, I think it was Poppy. She's like, oh, I'm just sending this to the family group, to Nana and Papa. And she's like, and Hal and Brenda Summers,
So funny.
and they're so close to us. They think of them, as our family, which they are. And it's just incredible for them to think about that. And so, yes, like this church is part of our lives. And we could go on and on for hours about how they support us through Sawyer's and just how they support us through everything.
Yeah.
Janice Bond sent me a birthday text the other day out of the blue. It was just a random message. Hey, this is Janice. Happy birthday. And, that just brought such joy to my day. It was really cool. So, like we couldn't have got through all of this. I couldn't have got along with our walk. I think in terms of just, you talk about challenges in our marriage and stuff, like the church being part of our lives has really, really brought us through all this. And so that's God bringing it into our life, but the church itself, how he's placed it. So it's beyond these 4 walls. It's beyond Sunday. It's in the community. It's part of our everyday lives. And I think, if there's a message for people that want to come to church, more than anything, that's what you get out of it. It's going to help you get through your everyday life, from tiny little challenges to congenital heart defects.
Seriously.
No big deal.
No big deal. But there's obviously a difference between just coming like on a Sunday and that's
Yeah.
it, right? It's just you got to be involved in a community. That's what it's all about. They
I
can see you
feel like
through.
our kids feel like our church is a part of their lives, not just, we just show up here and go home. They do definitely, or we do, we have a sense of belonging and we have a sense of an extended family here. So it's amazing, and it's been such a blessing for us.
That's cool. Well, thank you, guys. Thank you just for carving time out of, I don't know who's teaching your kids right now.
Private school
Avery,
right now.
Avery's teaching them.
Avery's got it. But thanks just for coming, just talking with us and just hearing your story, right? Because we know your story matters to God, right? And it matters to us too. So thanks for coming on, reminding us how God met you there in those very scary moments, whether it's through text messages or phone calls and through those moments, letting them know that He is near, because there's been times where I've been like that. I know there's other people who've gone through the exact same thing. And so to be reminded of that He's there, and to let us know that you guys together doing your adventure running and marathons, it's a great challenge at times, but it's encouraging. But it's encouraging, right? And just for the homeschooling aspect to your lives, it's really cool. And once again, it's been great just having a conversation, and can't wait to hear more about what God's going to do in your life.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.